Hey, it's Mandy again with Decarcerate Louisiana. Want to remind you about the rally coming up on October 28th. Next Wednesday, we will start at the old Capitol in Baton Rouge. It's a rally for an end to slavery in the Louisiana criminal justice system. We'll start there, we'll have speakers, and then we will march to the state capitol. We'll have additional speakers, and then we'll have refreshments. We're asking and hoping for a large presence there that day. We need to show the legislators, the people of the communities, the Baton Rouge area, state of Louisiana, that we're fighting for our brothers and sisters that are imprisoned. We're standing up against what's going on in the United States, this mass incarceration, this new slavery, this slavery redefined. So please join us, please, again, 11 a.m. next Wednesday. I want to read this from, that was written by the founder of Decarcerate Louisiana. I'm just going to read an excerpt from it, but it's entitled, Why and How to Decarcerate Louisiana and Support God-Given Rights to Resist Systemic Oppression that Dehumanize and Degrade People Inside the American Penal System. It starts out with a quote by Angela Davis. Does not thinking about the prison system and how it grew so fast in a short period of time relieve us of the responsibility of seriously engaging with the problems of our society, especially those produced by racism and increasingly global capitalism? So it's our responsibility, it's our duty to stand up for those that are imprisoned. It's also our duty and our responsibility to be educated on what's going on in this country. In our inner cities, we have high rates of unemployment, homelessness, domestic violence, state-sponsored criminalization of impoverished communities, and the militarization of the police, among other things, so that targeting these marginalized populations for incarceration becomes justified. The U.S. incarcerates 716 people per 100,000 every year and spends an estimated $80 billion on the criminal justice system en masse every year. And this doesn't change no matter which political party is in power. Decarcerate Louisiana presents an opportunity to oppose the growing reliance on prisons to solve social problems that are actually worsened by mass incarceration. So how did we embark upon mass incarceration? In the 1950s, corporations ran from organized labor in this country in search of nations, providing cheap labor pools so that it wouldn't have to pay higher wages, benefits, and so on. Then in the 1960s, and with huge numbers of Americans unemployed and living in poverty, domestic violence had erupted as people became desperate looking for ways to cope and survive. LBJ instituted the Great Society and encouraged the states to implement social welfare programs as an anti-poverty and anti-crime fighting strategy. However, with the election of Richard Nixon, the Great Society program was abandoned and a law and order strategy commenced that called for longer prison sentences and increased funding to the police. Reagan followed suit and even began cutting social safety net funding for housing, food subsidies, and prenatal care. The Bush and Clinton administrations went right along with the backlash and saw even higher rates of poverty, crime, and imprisonment. The Obama administration sought to tackle a part of the problem by changing laws relative to the powder and crack cocaine disparities in sentencing, but with 2.3 million citizens still behind bars, much work remains to be done. So in this, it talks about Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society program that was started and would have, been tremendous for our country, but then it just, was dropped with Nixon. I want to read something, an article about the Kerner Commission, which was something that was instituted by Lyndon Johnson also. So it's an article that's found in the Smithsonian Magazine. I just want to read parts of it. And it's entitled, The 1968 Kerner Commission Got It Right, But Nobody Listened. And it was in response, President Lyndon Johnson, he constituted the Kerner Commission to identify the genesis of the violent 1967 riots in Detroit. So pent-up frustrations boiled over in many poor African-American neighborhoods during the mid to late 1960s, setting off riots that rampaged out of control from block to block. Burning, battering, and ransacking property, raging crowds created chaos in which some neighborhood residents and law enforcement operatives endured shockingly random injuries or deaths. Many Americans blame the riots on outside agitators or young black men, who represented the largest and most visible group of rioters. But in March 1968, the Kerner Commission turned those assumptions upside down, declaring white racism, not black anger, turned the key that unlocked urban American turmoil. Bad policing practices, a flawed justice system, unscrupulous consumer credit practices, poor or inadequate housing, high unemployment, voter suppression, and other culturally embedded forms of racial discrimination all converged to propel violent upheaval on the streets of African American neighborhoods in American cities, north and south, east and west. And as black unrest arose, inadequately trained police officers and National Guard troops entered affected neighborhoods, often worsening the violence. White society, the presidentially appointed panel reported, is deeply implicated in the ghetto. White institutions created it, white institutions maintain it, and white society condones it. The nation, the Kerner Commission warned, was so divided that the United States was poised to fracture into two radically unequal societies, one black and one white. And then it also goes on to talk about what needs to be done to ratify this. Put more money into these communities. But what happened was Nixon was elected and the total opposite happened. Law and order was declared, and there was a war on crime, a war on poverty, and turned into a war on drugs. And we see the effects of it today with 2.4 million people imprisoned. And what we want to bring awareness to is that this is just another form of slavery. And that's what the rally is about on October 28th. And this is just the beginning of many efforts by Decarcerate Louisiana for an end to slavery in the Louisiana criminal justice system. So please come join us on October 28th. Thank you. All power to the people.